Apples, 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 apples. Get your fresh apples, 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 apples. Get your fresh apples, apples. Cashew covered, candy coated apples, candy coated apples. Regular apples, apples, sweet and savory, nice and juicy, good to the crunch, good to the taste. Apples, 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 apples. Come get your apples, come get your apples, come get your apples, come get your apples. Apples, 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 apples. Get your apples, get your apples. Line up and get your apples, line up and get your apples. Apples, 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 apples. Cashew candy coated apples, candy coated apples. Apples, 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 caramel apples. Line up, line up, line up. Get your apples, fresh apple made this morning, fresh apples, fresh apples, fresh apples. Get your apples, get your apples. Apples, 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 apples. Get your apples, get your apples, get your apples, fresh apples, cashew covered. Candy coated apples, apples, caramel coated apples, 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 apples. Get your apples, get your apples, get your apples, get your apples. Fresh apples, fresh apples, fresh apples. Cashew carameled apples, candy coated apples. Line up. Get your apples, get your apples, get your apples, get your apples. Have you ever had any of those apples? No, I haven't. They're very good. They're very good. Just like that guy said, they're sweet and they're savory to the crunch. They're good. I'm just now trying them. They're very good. I've been to the fair, and these apples are better than the apples that's at a fair. They're better at the apples than a grocery store. I heard that he made them on his own farm and he made them in his own kitchen. They're very good. You should try them. Apples, 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 apples. Get your fresh apples. Just $3. Cashew coated, candy covered apples, apples, carameled apples, apples, apples. Get your apples, get your apples, get your apples, get your apples, get your apples. Hey, you know that cat is ready to go in that street today and make a whopping with cashew carameled apples, candy covered apples today. And you imagine it, and now you an anti-Semite in that fish tank, and that bourgeois got his salt and pepper, and he giving out his food. Hey, and that contractor, that bourgeois, that plumber, hey, plumber, hey, they out there doing their business, and now you know that cock, if he really needed to, he ready to go out there and get the street crying, and that street crying ready to enable him to get that mango machine. Hey, he ready to make that business, and after he make that business, he gonna sell that business to some communists. Now some big company is owning it. Now that cock is in manufacturing. Hey, he ready to go and give him money and own him a mill outside the country. Hey, then he ready to start shipping some shit to the capitalist nation. Hey, I tell you something, Gene Black. Hey, Gene Black. He didn't go on board of the threat of communism, but he said it was a threat to democracy. Hey, now they ready to go to European countries, and they ready to make that mill in European countries, and they ready to ship it to the United States and put that tariff on that good, and you ready to pay all that money for that designer, but it was made overseas. Hey, now I tell you about that cock, and you see them Negroes on the street, and they ready to start selling crack cocaine, fentanyl, rainbow fentanyl, just so they can go put on designer. Hey, no matter how good that Negro get with that cocaine, no matter how good that Negro get with that fentanyl, he never gonna be better than that cock, because he never gonna be better than that white race, because that white race is better than that Negro, because they yoked by that cock, and that cock got a cash system with that white man. That's why I act like this. That's why I do the thing that I do. Now that Negro, he's street crying today, ready to be on that street. I know you seen it. Marijuana, loud, street crying. But ain't nobody gonna tell that Negro that he's street crying on that corner, selling them drugs, street crying with those drugs. But nobody gonna give him the vocabulary to let that Negro know what he doing on that corner. Hey, I'm not finding you. You don't want to talk about rap time, and you really don't want to expose that cock. You ready to tell me I'm an anti-Semite, but it's just a false pretense because you working with that cock. You just trying to call me with your suit saying that you standing with that cock. I'm not fond of you. I don't like you because you continue to do business with that cock while you giving me that false pretense, calling yourself comforting me, and you just trying to pick my pockets. I'm ready to put a bullet in your head.